And when he had said these things, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. And when he drew near to Bethphage and Bethany at the mount that is called Olivet, he sent 2 of the disciples, saying, "Go into the village in front of you. Where you are entering, you will find a colt tied, which no one has ever yet sat. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' you shall say this, 'The Lord has need of it.'" So those who were sent away went and found it just as he had told them. And as they were untying the colt, its owner said to them, "Why are you untying the colt?" And they said, "The Lord has need of it." And they brought it to Jesus. Throwing their cloaks on the colt, they set Jesus on it. And as he rode along, they spread their cloaks on the road. As he was drawing near, already on the way down the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of his disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works that they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest." And some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." He answered, "I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out."
Years back, when I was in youth ministry, I used to help with a club. There's a middle school club called First Priority. And I had decided I would help out this club kind of a couple months into the school year. And so I showed up to the middle school there, and a person was transitioning out of youth ministry, and I think they were moving away. And they said, "Josh, I want you to kind of just take this club and go with it." And like most school clubs, for it to be a legit school club, students had to lead it. And so you had to have student leaders. And this pastor who had left this ministry, this club ministry in the middle school, had already chosen the leaders by this time. And for the most part, most of the leaders that he left me were really good, except for 2. They were believers. I don't know if you know what a believer is, but a believer is a Justin Bieber fan. It's been a little while since he's been super popular. I'm not sure they really exist in the way that they used to. But these young girls, these believers, every time I saw them, I showed up to the school about once or twice a week, actually twice a week, once to plan for the First Priority Club that met early in the morning on Friday mornings before we had school, and then earlier in the week to actually plan what we were going to do on Friday mornings. And every time I showed up, every time I saw these 2 girls, they were covered in head to toe in Justin Bieber clothes, like everything. They had like these bands here. Their arms were covered with them, and all of them said something about Justin Bieber. And all I could think is, like, thank God we have like laws on the books that you are not allowed to go get tattoos before you turn 18 without your parents' permission, because I promise you, like, these girls would have been covered with Justin Bieber tattoos if they would have been allowed to be. Now, it really wasn't that big of a deal that these girls really liked Justin Bieber or that they wore all of these sorts of things to me. I could have really dealt with that. I could have been okay with that. It wouldn't have been that big of a problem. Like, I didn't care about that much. But during our planning meetings, this would happen all the time, is that they would change the subject from what we were trying to plan for this club called First Priority, where we were asking their peers to come on Friday mornings before school started to hear about Jesus, celebrate Jesus, and to learn about Jesus. During these planning meetings, these were leaders. They would always change the subject to Justin Bieber. And I was able to deal with this for a while. I can deal with most people for a while, even the ones that really annoy me. So you know, right? But there comes a breaking point. Right? You all have different, we all have a particular breaking point, but it got several maybe months into it. I'm not sure exactly how long I waited, but at one point we're having this meeting, and I just stopped them. So stop. We are not talking about Justin Bieber. And to be honest, girls, like, I do not believe that you worship Jesus Christ. This is like I've never really done this before. But I said, you know who you worship. Do you know who your first priority is? And they kind of just looked at me like, oh no, ticked off the pastor. Right? It's Justin Bieber. And I said, to be honest, like, what you are doing and what you are about is not good for you, and it's not good for the Biebs. So you can imagine how they reacted, right? They didn't care at all. They did not care at all. Just so you know, like, if you go into ministry, don't take yourself too seriously. Now, these young ladies, these young girls, like, we laugh at this, right? We kind of think that this is silly, right? That's kind of what young people do. But the truth is that all of us are like them in some way. All of us are devoted to something, someone, something greatly. Like, we all worship. And this is because we are hardwired to worship. We are. This is how God created us. When He created Adam and Eve, He created them so that they might worship Him. Their souls were bent to worship Him. And then at the fall, they're bent to worship themselves or something or creation itself. But you have the capacity to worship, and God created you for that purpose. And so, worship, devotion, admiration, all of that is very human. And so whether you're very young or you're a teenager or you're an adult, you are a worshiper. Author, philosopher, and English professor David Wallace Foster, in his commencement speech at Kenyon College in 2005, had this to say. This is considered to be one of the greatest commencement speeches of all time. I don't know how that, like, who decides that? Google does, I guess, right? And I need to, because it helps me with the sermon, to tell you that. But no, seriously, this is considered to be one of the greatest commencement speeches of all time. And this is what he told the young people who were graduating college at Kenyon College in 2005. He said this to them. He said, because here's something else that's weird but true. In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there's actually no such thing as atheism. There's no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice is what we get to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type of thing to worship, be it Jesus Christ, JC, Allah, be it Yahweh, or the Wiccan Mother Goddess, or the Four Noble Truths, or some unavoidable set of ethical principles, and he continues here. But what Wallace says basically is that there's a weird truth about human beings that we all find something to worship. And for each and every one of us, what he says is that worship itself is not a choice. It's actually part of being human. It's what you are hardwired to do. This is what this philosopher is telling these students here. And he's telling them that even if you don't believe in God, you cannot escape worship. So what is worship? Pastor Greg Laurie says this rightly. He says, of course, not everyone worships God, but when you get down to it, everyone worships. Everyone has built an altar in their lives to someone or something. And so he says, everyone builds altars. Now, what do altars for? What do they do? They're a place historically where you bring sacrifices. And if you've read the Bible at all, you know that those in the Old Testament, when they would bring their sacrifices, what would they bring? They would bring their first. They would bring their best. It's where you go, where you travel to give something to the deity that you are worshiping, or to the God that you are worshiping, to show your devotion, to show your admiration. You're going to bring it to the altar, and you're going to bring it to the altar hoping and praying for, blessings. It's where you think you're going to find your blessing. It's where you think you're going to find peace. Wallace says, everyone worships. Everyone has an altar. Everyone builds an altar. It's what it means to be human. He said worship is not a choice. But he says we do have a choice. Our choice is that we get to decide who or what we worship. This brings us to the story that Debbie read for us in Luke 19. I'm going to be picking up here in verse 37. And it says this, the disciples, by the way, they're along the road. Jesus is heading down the Mount of Olives. He's on the colt, and he's riding down, and there are people. His disciples are worshiping. They're screaming, Hosanna, and praising God here. And here's what it says, beginning in verse 37. It says, as Jesus was drawing near, already on the way down the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works that he had seen, saying, blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. So these people are on the road. Jesus is riding the donkey. He's heading to Jerusalem on the colt, and we're told that these people here, his disciples, are worshiping him for two basic reasons. One is that they have seen the mighty works that Jesus has done throughout his ministry. We are nearing the end of Jesus' ministry here, and Jesus has touched the sick that nobody else would touch and healed the sick that nobody else would heal. He's healed people with leprosy. He's touched those people that everybody else was afraid to touch and given them a new life and restored them to the community and put them right with the people around them and the people that were afraid of him. Jesus gave sight to the blind. He healed the lame. He cast out unclean spirits, and he fed 5,000 people. Now, I'd like to believe that the people, these disciples here, these are Jesus' disciples. Let's make that clear here. So these are the people who have decided to follow Jesus. I like to believe that the people on the side of the road, we don't know this for sure, but it's very likely that the people who are worshiping Jesus are those who healed of leprosy. They're consists of the blind man who now sees. The people who had no food on that day when they were listening to his teaching were fed by Jesus miraculously. The people who struggled with the demons that they had, that Jesus cast out. These are the people on the side of the road, and these are the people that are worshiping Jesus, the people who have seen the mighty works that he has done, the people who sing the song, oh, what great things he has done. These are the type of people that are there on the side of the road. They're the people who remember this. And as I thought about this, I'm often embarrassed about how often, I forget the mighty works that Jesus has done in my life. Second reason they're worshiping Jesus is they claim him to be king. They claim him to be king. So there's this celebration that's happening. Now, the celebration is a type of celebration that kings receive. Often as kings either leave or enter cities, they have two different kind of types of celebrations, right? Kings typically leave or come back into the city for one or two reasons. They leave cities often to go off to war. When they re-enter a city, if they are coming back from a war, if you are celebrating their return, guess what has happened? They have achieved victory here. And so what this crowd is proclaiming here, as Jesus is riding into Jerusalem, the city of God here, the city of peace, Jesus is on his way. There's this crowd here that is claiming that Jesus is king, but not only is he king, that Jesus is victorious. Now, Jesus hasn't even gone to the cross yet. He hasn't risen from the dead yet. They don't even know exactly what they're celebrating, but they just know that they believe that Jesus is king and that he is victorious here. And they are proclaiming that, like that Jesus reigns supreme, that all authority, all power, everything has been given to him and will be laid at his feet. This is what they are projecting to everyone else around them, by the way, which was fairly dangerous because Jesus was not the earthly king. But they're still doing this and proclaiming this. The entire story is trying to get us to see this to a certain extent, even by Jesus sending his disciple to go to the owner of the colt. When Jesus tells his disciple who goes to the owner of the colt, and the owner asks him, well, who needs the colt? And the disciple says, well, the Lord has need of it. What we are being told, or what we should see, is that the Lord here has the right to ask for anything in the kingdom because it actually all belongs to him to begin with. Now, we have this person who's done these mighty acts. We have this person who is being worshiped and proclaimed as king. But this is really interesting here as you read through the book of Luke. We're told this is how one of the things that they do to celebrate. They are screaming and shouting, peace in heaven. Now, if you go back to Christmas, what does the angel say when the angel shows up and proclaims Jesus coming? Peace on what? On earth. Now, I told you a while back when we started Luke, like Luke is a historian, he's also a theologian, like he's trying to teach us something here. And he picked up on this here. Now, why would he say the people are screaming here? Why would he write here that the people are saying peace in heaven and nowhere do we see peace on earth? Why not? Here's why. Jesus is the peace of heaven. He is. Well, what is heaven? Heaven is perfection. Heaven is harmony. Heaven is what you see in the Old Testament, shalom. It's perfect peace. So we have this taking place, like we have this idea taking place here in this person in front of them, and they're shouting this. So why not peace on earth? We have the full manifestation of heaven right in front of us. Peace, harmony, perfection, all of it right there. Well, that is because what is about to happen next is the earthly means is going to get in the way of Jesus bringing heaven, or the people experiencing the heaven of Jesus here. Let me show you what I mean. Verse 39. And some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." Rebuke your disciples. So some Pharisees show up. These are people who are not following Jesus. And we know this because they call him teacher. We have people who are praising Jesus. They see him as Lord. They see him as king. They believe that he's able to bring these mighty works, and he's done that. And now we have the Pharisees who are saying he's not that, but he's primarily a teacher. And what they are saying here is, Jesus, you should rebuke your disciples, so tell them to stop. What they're trying to do is get Jesus to tell his disciples to no longer worship him, and basically distract the crowd there from worshiping Jesus as he rides in. Now, watch how Jesus responds. He's answered them, "I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out." And so Jesus is told to rebuke the disciples here who are worshiping him. Instead, basically, he rebukes the Pharisees and says, "I'm not going to do that." And instead, he proclaims himself to be a rock star. He does. Have you ever thought about that? Jesus was a rock star before we even thought about what rock stars might be. And not only that, like, he is the only true rock star. He's saying, if these people in front of me will not worship me, even the rocks are going to cry out. And so he's telling the Pharisees, get out of the way. Because creation was designed to worship me. Creation was designed to exalt me. And if these people don't, who are gathered here today, if you don't, the rocks will. Now, this is an incredible statement here by Jesus. You know, people will say, well, Jesus never really claimed to be God. Well, he did in several places. This is one of them, by the way. Jesus is proclaiming that creation exists for him and that he is the creator and that he has authority over creation itself. That is basically what he is saying here. Colossians 1:16 through 17 says, for by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things are held together. Everything was created by Christ, for Christ, and he holds everything together. Then we get this passage in Revelation. If you know anything about Revelation, it's the last book of the Bible. If you know any more about Revelation, what you know is that Revelation was written in the midst of extreme persecution. Nero is killing as many Christians as he can and is banishing as many Christians as he can and blaming every bad thing that happens in society on Christians themselves. And the person who is writing Revelation is in prison, and what he is trying to get us to do when we read Revelation is not try to figure out, like, use the book as some type of code to figure out when the end times are going to come or whatever, or how it all works perfectly. None of that. Like, that's not why Revelation was written. It's helpful for some of that. But rather, it is a book that is calling us to trust in and believe in and worship Jesus Christ and wait for him. And in it, John writes this in chapter 4, verse 11. He's telling people who are struggling, who are being persecuted. He's telling them this: you need to worship. And he tells them why. In verse 11, worthy are you, O Lord, and God, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created. And so John looks out at a chaotic world, and he tells those who are disciples of Jesus Christ and who are committed to Jesus Christ and who are worshiping Jesus Christ, he says the only way to fix the chaos, and to seek heaven is to choose to continue to worship the Creator, the one who is over everything. You need to choose who and what is right to worship, because all of this chaos, everything else that you see around you, are people who have decided to choose to worship something and someone else. And that is the cause. So don't give up, is what John is telling them. You want to fix it? Don't stop. David Foster Wallace continues in his commencement speech in this way. Says this: because pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough. Never feel you have enough. It's the truth. Worship your body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally grieve you. On one level, we all know this stuff already. It's been codified as myths. Let me stop there for a second because it's important for us. Dr. Wallace here, he's a philosopher. Philosophers and theologians, when we or they talk about myths, they don't mean some untrue story. Like, they don't just mean like Roman mythology, like these things that didn't really happen, but just explain things. They can mean that is a myth, but when a theologian or a philosopher, when we talk about myths, we don't always talk about it in that way, because sometimes it's just pejorative. It didn't really happen, it doesn't really matter. But when we talk about myths in this way, what we talk about are stories that may or may not have actually happened in time of history. But myths are stories that convey truths, and if you understand and get those truths, they are transformational. That's what a theologian, that's what a professional philosopher, when they're talking about myths, they're not sometimes not even considering whether it's true or not. They're asked, or whether it actually happened in history, but whether or not it is true, and whether or not if you take in the story, if it will transform your life. And so, hold on to that for a second. He said it's been codified as myths, proverbs, cliches, epigrams, parables, the skeleton of every great story. So the whole trick is keeping the truth up in front in daily consciousness. So this is a story where Jesus is riding down from the Mount of Olives and he's riding into Jerusalem. This is the myth. It happened in time in history. I believe that, so just not to confuse you. Right? But the question for us all as we read this story and understand what they were doing, Jesus' disciples were doing as Jesus rode down the mountain into Jerusalem, is how is this story true in your life today? How is this story transformational in your life today when we look at it? The crowd here is committed to follow and worship Jesus, but the Pharisees are trying to get in the way of what the people are designed to do. So, what gets in your way? What gets in your way? Or who or what keeps you from praising and worshiping God? What keeps you from finding peace? Sometimes it can be religious leaders. We can get in the way. I find Jesus interesting, but don't go that far. Don't obey him. Like, don't go all out. Don't sing too loud. Don't clap your hands, Charlie. Don't do that. Don't raise your hand. None of that. Don't lay your cloaks on the ground. You don't have that many of them to begin with. Don't give him everything you own. Instead, here, I have 5 things that you can do that will make your life better, or just obey these rules, or hey, let's lift up this person and let's believe that this person can change our country or society or whatever it is, or this group of people. Let's do that. But we all know if we do that, if we worship other people or created things, if we try to live up to the ethical standards only that some teacher, preacher, whatever they might be, whatever they set, what you'll discover is all of those people, all of those religions, all of those ethical standards, they all lack power and they all lack the grace that we really need. Relationships can get in the way. Anyone in your life that has more authority, or that you give more devotion to, or that you have more admiration for, then Jesus is an example of this. Now, I love relationships. You need relationships. Relationships are a beautiful thing. They are. But only Jesus only Jesus will truly never leave you nor forsake you. And he's the only one who you can give all of your love and all of your admiration to, who will not take advantage of you. The pursuit of health and wealth. If you worship money and things, as Wallace says, if they are what tap the real meaning in your life, then you will never have enough, never feel you have enough. It's the truth. Worship of your body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when the time and age starts showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally grieve you. It's true. We are doing an interesting case study right now with our social media accounts, right? Hoping that if we just post everything out there so people tell us how good or beautiful we are constantly, like hopefully that will make us feel better about ourselves. It is showing us, however, it makes us feel worse about ourselves. Hobbies. Our hobbies can get in the way. How much time and money, right, do you spend on your hobbies? Are you more devoted to your hobbies than you are to Christ? The truth is you're going to get to the point where you can't golf. What will you have to live for? Golf is a great game, by the way, Dan, right? But it's an awful God. It'll let you down. Self. The pursuit of happiness or self-promotion. You want to be the one on the colt. I want to be riding down the mountain onto Jerusalem, and I want people to be cheering for me. But anybody who has had that experience knows that somebody is trying to knock you off the colt and wants the colt for themselves. And when they get it, it'll just leave you bitter and depressed, and you will not have the peace that you thought you would find. What about cultural expressions of the holidays, the holy days? Now, I love me some Santa. Right? I love looking forward to Santa coming. Okay? But if I look forward more to that than I do for the return of Jesus at Christmas time, what am I doing? Love me some Easter bunny. But if I look forward more to a basket full of whatever the Easter bunny is going to put in there, or the eggs that he is going to hide, and thinking about the resurrection of Christ, I've got it wrong. Santa and the Easter bunny aren't enough. Some of you got scared there. Misplaced worship is looking to earth for the peace of heaven and never finding it. But if you look for the peace of heaven, if you look toward the peace of heaven, if you worship the peace of heaven, you'll find peace on earth. That's the truth. David Foster Wallace tells us the whole trick is keeping the truth up in front of you in your daily conscience. As believers in Jesus Christ, not believers, we must understand this. Jesus is the only rock star. He is the only one worthy of our devotion. He is the only one worthy of our worship. So don't let soulless rocks do what you were created to do. We're going to end by watching this video that the children's ministry put together for us as we celebrate Easter and Palm Sunday here. Enjoy.
Hey, it's me. Happy Easter.
Yeah, whatever.
Hey, it's me. Aren't you excited?
Oh, sure. We're real excited.
What are you guys talking about anyway?
We're talking about Easter.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to tell you all about Easter, and I'm here. Ha 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 ha. Why aren't you guys excited to see me?
Oh, of course we're excited to see you. Just that you're not really what Easter's about.
I'm not?
No, you're not, and that's what we're just talking about. It's all right here, and we were just reading about how the disciples got the greatest surprise ever on the first Easter morning.
Ooh, let me guess. I know. A supersized, extravagant Easter basket that's this high and filled with all sorts of candy? No?
No!
So much more.
Now, don't get us wrong. We like candy. It's just that if that's all Easter is about, it's a pretty empty holiday.
It's not about me. It's not about candy. And I'm lost.
Exactly. That's what Easter is all about. Easter is all about Jesus rising from the dead. And Jesus came to seek and save the lost. Let's go talk about this some more while our teacher tells these kids the real meaning of Easter.
It was really incredible. On Palm Sunday, Jesus entered Jerusalem riding on a donkey. Everyone went crazy, praising Jesus and waving palm branches to honor him. The soldiers beat Jesus and put on a crown of thorns. The soldiers made Jesus carry his cross to the place where he would die. Jesus hung on the cross while the soldiers mocked him. Finally, he died on the cross and was taken down to be buried. But that's not the end of the story. They buried Jesus in a tomb, and 3 days later,